Good morning and welcome to our UBC Learning Circle, A Poem is a Possibility, Writing Toward a Healthy Outlook with Rena Priest. Today's conversation is presented in partnership with the Center for Excellence in Indigenous Health, and we'd like to thank the First Nations Health Authority for generously funding the UBC Learning Circle and allowing us to have these conversations. Before we formally begin, I'd like to acknowledge with respect and gratitude that I'm joining you from the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Please feel free to introduce yourselves and the nation you're calling in from in the chat box. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Serene Squawkin. I'm the Learning Circle Manager. I'm Seal Okanagan on my mother's side and Hickory Apache and Belgian on my father's side. I will get Nicole to introduce herself in just a second. Nicole and I will be the moderator for today's discussion. Joining us today, working behind the scenes, is Cynthia, our production coordinator, and Kira, our production assistant. They'll be interacting with everyone in the chat. And finally, before we get into today's discussion, I'll provide a gentle heads up that the topics covered may be sensitive or emotionally triggering. Please make sure that you are looking after yourself, and if at any point in time you feel like you need to talk to an elder, friend, counselor, or family member, don't hesitate to do so. We have some prompts in the chat if you need additional support. Now I'll turn it over to Nicole to introduce herself, and then we'll turn it over to Rena to introduce herself.
Okay, hello, my name is Nicole North Pagan. I'm Anishinaabe from the Kwamikong unceded territory and Blackfoot from the Piikani Nation located in Treaty 7 territory. I'm in my third year at UBC studying psychology, and now I'll turn it over to Rena.
Ait sgwael Mischalacha. Well, he looks in Quinasatla Tikai, Sahwaltanat, Sanasnat Chachlamison. Hello, everyone. I'm so pleased to be joining you this morning or this afternoon, wherever you may be. I see some people came in from the UK. Hello over there. I'm just really happy to be here to talk about my writing practice and how I've used poetry as a tool to see me through very challenging times in my life, and also to celebrate the beauty and happiness, the happy moments that I want to hang on to forever. So this presentation is called "A Poem is a Possibility," and we're going to do a few writing prompts. So if you have pen and paper, or if you work on your laptop or wherever you may be, kind of know that at some point through this presentation, you're going to have an opportunity to do some writing, and it's going to be a lot of fun. But let's just go ahead and get into it. So, a poem is a possibility, and this is a generative writing workshop, and it explores the poem as a new way of seeing. So in our Tlimichasan, my tribal language, the Lemi language, when I became poet laureate of the state, people would ask me, what's the word for poem or poet in your language? And I had never heard one. So I went to my teachers and I went to my Aksalas and I asked, what is the word for poem or poet? And they said, well, it could be a shwiam, which is a story. It could be stilam, which is a song, or it could be a tiwich, which is a prayer. And then this is a nice quote from Margaret Green, who was an elder at Lummi. She said, we had a means of oral instruction called storytelling, values, behavior codes, history, geography, civics, survival skills, you name it. It was all there in our stories. And this is definitely something that is true for poetry too. You can put history, you can put history in the form of a story, you can, and of course, using language in a more musical way. So just a little bit more out of the ordinary ways of speaking makes it a song, just using the human voice. So it is all of these things. And Lee Miracle of the Stalo Nation, she says, we regard words as coming from original being, a sacred spiritual being. The orator is coming from a place of prayer, and as such attempts to be persuasive. Words are not objects to be wasted. They represent the accumulated knowledge, cultural values, the vision of an entire people or peoples. We believe the proof of a thing or idea is in the doing. So, kind of talking about words and actions and this principle that, how we think of the world, we think of it in terms of language. So, when we feel good, if we think we feel good, that's expressed in words, in our thoughts. Even if it's just the words in our thoughts, we understand it through language. And so that's really powerful. It makes the language that we have in our minds and the language that we speak very, very significant in how we're feeling. And then Joy says, this is Joy Harjo. She is Muskogee, and she was the first Indigenous Poet Laureate of the United States. And she says, this is from her poem, Eagle Poem. To pray, you open your whole self to sky, to earth, to sun, to moon, to one whole voice that is you. So this idea that we are our voice is also special and significant in thinking about how powerful it is to use our voice and how that shapes our reality. So where do poems come from? This is a question I get asked a lot too in interviews. Where do your poems come from? And I like this. This is Shakespeare talking about where poems come from. He says, the poet's eye in fine frenzy rolling, doth glance from heaven to earth, from earth to heaven, and as imagination bodies forth forms of things unknown, the poet's pen turns them to shapes and gives to airy nothing a local habitation and a name. So I like the idea that, they come from airy nothing. It's true. Like, where do our thoughts come from, for that matter? Where do our words come from? It's you can get kind of deep and philosophical thinking about this. I like this story. I think I have to stop sharing and then, let's see if we can get to it.
I had this encounter recently where I met the extraordinary American poet Ruth Stone, who's now in her 90s, but she's been a poet her entire life. And she told me that when she was growing up in rural Virginia, she would be out working in the fields, and she said she would feel and hear a poem coming at her from over the landscape. And she said it was like a thunderous train of air, and it would come barreling down at her over the landscape. And when she felt it coming, because it would shake the earth under her feet, she knew that she had only one thing to do at that point, and that was to, in her words, run like hell. And she would run like hell to the house, and she'd be getting chased by this poem. And the whole deal was that she had to get to a piece of paper and a pencil fast enough so that when it thundered through her, she could collect it and grab it on the page. And other times she wouldn't be fast enough, so she'd be running and running and running, and she wouldn't get to the house, and the poem would barrel through her, and she would miss it. And she said it would continue on across the landscape, looking, as she put it, for another poet. And then there were these times, this is the piece I never forgot. She said that there were moments when she would almost miss it, right? So she's running into the house and she's looking for the paper, and the poem passes through her, and she grabs a pencil just as it's going through her. And then she said it was like she would reach out with her other hand and she would catch it. She would catch the poem by its tail, and she would pull it backwards into her body as she was transcribing on the page. And in these instances, the poem would come up on the page perfect and intact, but backwards from the last word to the first. So when I heard that, I was like, that's uncanny. That's exactly what my creative process is like.
So that's kind of a fun story of the idea that, these poems and our thoughts and our words, that they're just out there swirling around the landscape, and that, you could just have one land on you, a poem or a thought. And I kind of like that. It's similar to, we'll see what's on the next slide, and we'll just keep charging along here. That was Elizabeth Gilbert talking about Ruth Stone. And then Franz Kafka, he says, this is his idea or his practice of writing. If you can't come up with a good idea, because I often present to, middle and high school classes, and they always say, I have nothing to write about. And So then this is the answer to that. So if you have nothing to write about, remain sitting at your table and listen. Do not even listen, simply wait, be quiet, still, and solitary. The world will freely offer itself to you to be unmasked. It has no choice. It will roll in ecstasy at your feet. So now what we're going to do is we're going to try this. We're all going to have a minute of silence here. I'm going to turn on my timer and just kind of notice what you notice. Just see if you try. I always say, you know, we are thinking beings and we can't even help it if we even just try to start out by trying not to think of anything at all, and see what happens. So I'm going to go ahead and start the timer right now. Okay, so that was only 1 minute. It's amazing how in 1 minute, you know, it can, if you try not to think for a minute, it's almost like time expands in a way. And our brains are such powerful machines. They're such powerful engines. And, you know, if you kind of get if we're not kind of paying attention to it, it'll do what it wants. But when we start paying attention to it, it'll still do what it wants, but at least we'll be paying attention to it, and we can then shift it and shape it. And I always think of writing as a very powerful way of seeing how the brain works and being able to change what I'm thinking about a thing. Because, you know, when you're writing something, you can edit it. And if you can edit, they say thinking is writing, and if writing is thinking, then and you can edit what you're writing, you can edit what you're thinking, and you can think thoughts that are more useful to you. You know, how many times have I written something and thought, no, that's not quite right, and then I can just cross it out and then write something else underneath it, and instead. And so this is it's sort of a powerful practice, not only in my life, or not only in my writing, but also in my life, to be able to change things that are not as helpful to me or not as strong as they could be if I just sat down and did a little bit of editing and a little bit of work on my thinking. And so now we're going to try some writing. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. And we're going to choose one of these, and we're going to write for 5 minutes. So, poet as photographer of airy nothing and things unknown. You can choose one of these. There are several. Whichever one speaks to you is the one you should choose. And we're going to write for 5 minutes, and we'll go till, well, let's see. We'll go until 10:20. Well, let's see, 10:23. And I'm going to go ahead and start the timer. But first, I'll just introduce the prompts. So one is, you can write a detailed description of something you're grateful for. You can write the recurring thought from your minute of silence, if you had one. It's always kind of fun when we're doing interactions, like in a live classroom, to hear what people thought about in their minute of silence. A lot of stuff comes up. So if you had something come up in your minute of silence, that's a good one to write about. You could write about a memorable conversation you once had. You can, and this is what I say, that like I use my poetry also as a personal archive. I will put these conversations from people into my poetry so that I can keep them with me. You can write about a phrase you heard repeatedly in childhood. Like I remember whenever I used to kind of be a little bit of a busybody when I was a kid, and I'd be trying to help out in the kitchen or whatever. And my mom would say, "Who's skinning this cat?" And I just remember, so if there was something like that, that you remember hearing in your childhood, a phrase, and thinking about taking it apart and trying to understand it, like, where did that phrase come from? Our language is kind of interesting. The things that get used regularly in our language, in the language that we use. Or you could write about a question you've always wanted answered, or you could write about what you dreamt about last night. When I'm stuck in my writing, I will often kind of try to keep a dream journal, because dreams are so interesting and weird and tell us a lot about, our unconscious mind. You can write about how you feel. You can write about a secret you're keeping, or you want to write about what you want to hang on to in this moment. Okay, so those are the things, just a few prompts, or you could write about anything you want, but we're going to go ahead and just do this for 5 minutes, and I'll leave this up so that you can all refer to it. But I'm going to stop my video and turn off my microphone, and we'll go ahead and write starting now. So that was 5 minutes. And I like to do the little 5-minute sprints because it's low investment. You know, it's just 5 minutes of your time. And I can waste 5 minutes so easily, like kind of scrolling or staring out the window or whatever. So, you know, it's really nice to be able to just kind of like take 5 minutes and write. And I call those my little sprints. And, you know, you save them or you put them together or you expand on them when you have a chance to sit down and write, and then you've started something. So, and it's also, like I say, a different way of looking at things. So it's just shifting your focus. So if you're having like a bad day and everything seems like it really is terrible, if you sit down and write a description of something you're grateful for, or take a walk and think about what you're grateful for and then sit down and write about it, then it just really has this powerful way of changing things and shifting that. So I'm going to go ahead and share a poem that came out of this practice. And it's called Tour of a Salmonberry. Since we're almost into salmonberry season, guys, it's so exciting. Let's see here. Here we go. Tour of a Salmonberry. A salmonberry is a luminous spiral, a golden basket woven of sunshine, water, and bird song. I'm told that the birds sing so sweet because of all the berries they eat, and that is how you can have a sweet voice too. In my native language, the word for salmonberry is alila. In Sanskrit, lila means God plays. Salmonberries sometimes look that way. Every year they debut, spectacular in the landscape, worthy of their genus name, Rubus spectabilis, meaning red sight worth seeing. Each druplet holds a seed and the shimmering secret kept by rain of how to rise, float above the earth, feel the sun, and return. So in that poem, I used a couple of the different things that were in the prompt. One of them was, you know, the thing that I'm grateful for, because, you know, when the salmonberry starts to show up, the blossoms are these really pretty pink blossoms. And so in the springtime, you see those and you're like, oh, it's almost over. Winter's almost over. They're kind of like the first berry to kind of show up on the scene. And so I'm always super, super grateful for that. And then the way that they look, if you see them out in the woods, they're just these shining, like they're like jewels. They glitter. They're just so beautiful. And so, you know, just grateful for that. And of course they taste really great. But the other piece of that prompt that I gave you, one of them was write about a conversation you once heard, or something that you heard repeated in your childhood. And this was a story that my mom, she tells it every year when the salmonberries come out. She remembers her grandpa Casimir and how he always used to tell her if she ate a lot of berries, she'd sing pretty like the birds. And, you know, so this happened, it was like every year that she tells this story. And so I thought I'd put it in a poem. Anyhow, moving on, let's see. I'm going to look through the comments really quick because I see there's lots of comments in here. And I've just been charging along with the presentation, but okay, cool. Someone got a poem out of the dream last night. Awesome. Yeah, okay. I wrote on all of them a little, sentences stretch the mind. Good, good. A poem for a moment of silence. It's within the peace you find your feet. It is within the silence you find your guidance. Sitting still, if you will, let a voice join the dance if you take the minute and give them their chance. Awesome. Thank you, Lori. Yeah, you can share what you wrote if you like. Maybe we'll go, there's going to be more writing, so let's save it until the end, and then if you feel moved, we can share it. So let's keep going. Okay, cool. So this is a poem by Louise Erdrich, and she says, advice to myself, leave the dishes. Let the celery rot in the bottom drawer of the refrigerator and an earthen scum harden on the kitchen floor. Leave the black crumbs in the bottom of the toaster. Throw the cracked bowl out and don't patch the cup. Don't patch anything. Don't mend. Buy safety pins. Don't even sew a button. Let the wind have its way, then the earth that invades as dust, and then the dead foaming up in gray rolls underneath the couch. Talk to them. Tell them they are welcome. Don't keep all the pieces of the puzzles or the doll's tiny shoes in pairs. Don't worry who uses whose toothbrush or if anything matches at all. Accept one word to another or a thought. Pursue the authentic. Decide first what is authentic, then go after it with all your heart. Your heart, that place you don't even think of cleaning out. That closet stuffed with savage mementos. Don't sort the paper clips from screws from saved. Don't sort the paper clips from screws from saved baby teeth, or worry if we're all eating cereal for dinner again. Don't answer the telephone ever, or weep over anything at all that breaks. Pink molds will grow within those sealed cartons in the refrigerator. Accept new forms of life and talk to the dead who drift in through the screen windows, who collect patiently on the tops of food jars and books. Recycle the mail. Don't read it. Don't read anything except what destroys the insulation between yourself and your experience, or what pulls down, or what strikes at, or what shatters this ruse you call necessity. So I love this poem. I love this poem because it talks about, so much about how we care so much for the things kind of happening outside of us in the physical world. This transition right here. Let me go back where she says, oh, can I go back? Yeah. Where she says, pursue the authentic, decide first what is authentic, then go after it with all your heart, that place you don't even think of cleaning out, that closet stuffed with savage mementos, right? So we pay so much attention to what happens out in the physical world. And then, to write a poem is a way, I think, of cleaning out your heart, this closet stuffed with savage mementos. Anyway, I love the beautiful poem. Anyway, so this one is Stephen King telling us what writing is. I'm a big fan. He says, writing is telepathy, of course. So let's assume that you're in your favorite receiving place, just as I am in the place where I do my best transmitting. We'll have to perform our mentalist routine, not just over distance, but over time as well. Yet that presents no real problem if we can still read Dickens, Shakespeare, and with the help of a footnote or two, Herodotus. I think we can manage the gap between 1997 and 2023. And here we go, actual telepathy in action. You'll notice I have nothing up my sleeves and that my lips never move, neither most likely do yours. Look, here's a table covered with a red cloth. On it is a cage the size of a small fish aquarium. In the cage is a white rabbit with a pink nose and pink-rimmed eyes. In its front paws is a carrot stub upon which it is contentedly munching. On its back, clearly marked in blue ink, is the numeral 8. Do we see the same thing? We'd have to get together and compare notes to make absolutely sure, but I think we do. We're having a meeting of the minds. So this is pretty cool too, the idea that writing is telepathy. Often I have had things that I have not been able to feel like I could express to anyone in the moment. They just seemed too complicated or too big or too, maybe I felt foolish for feeling a certain way about them, or just for whatever reason, I couldn't share it in the moment. And you can write it down and nobody ever has to see it, or, you can write it down and it can be just for you and your self-reflection, or you can write it down and think that maybe someday somebody will read it and you will have a way of connecting with them. They will benefit from it in some way and you benefit from writing it. So in that way, writing is super powerful. I'm going to skip this and go straight in. Nah, I guess we'll do it. Let's go ahead and it's a video. So we're going to go out and then in again.
So for millennia, songs have been at the center of our lifeways.
Whoops.
Prior to European contact, songs were integral to everyday life, whether hunting, fishing, or gathering roots and berries, the songs were ever present. And in the context of sacred ceremonies, songs were a catalyst for spiritual power and healing. So songs were not composed. They were given to individuals in dreams in a process of spiritual transmission from the spirit realm. Songs might also be received by an individual while they're awake. There are places within the landscape where songs are known to reside, what I refer to as the sacred geography of song. So if a song is given and received by an individual, it comes with responsibilities and obligations on the part of its singer. And that's rooted in a kind of reciprocity between our everyday mundane realm, if you will, and the spirit realm. So for Indigenous communities throughout the interior Northwest, and for that matter, throughout present-day North America and the world, such songs are used as a sacred technology to bring individuals and communities into balance. So while working toward a PhD in ethnomusicology at the University of Colorado, this relationship between songs and spiritual power became my primary focus. This interest was fueled in part by my own experience with songs in ceremonial contexts, but it was also rooted in a desire to know more about my family history, in particular how Gibson Eli, a great uncle I never knew in life, used songs as medicine to heal.
Okay, so that was the scholar, let's see, Chris Hamill. Oh, I'm going to share my screen again so that we can get back to the presentation. Oh no, Chad Hamill, sorry. This is the Indigenous scholar Chad Hamill, and the link, I believe they're going to share these slides with you all. You can just click on the picture and it'll take you to the full talk. But I like the idea that he presents. It's kind of expanding on the idea that Elizabeth Gilbert talked about and sharing her story about Ruth Stone and how the stories come across, or the poems come across the landscape and they go through us. But this idea that, you know, that songs can exist in a place, that they can, you know, the idea of sacred geography, you can go out into places and feel it. But like, also the idea of our language, just our language is a song, is and that it's very healing, that the sounds that we make, that they themselves carry power, right? This is John Frederick Nim's frequency scale of English vowel sounds. Can you all hear, or can you all see the scale? Cool. Okay, great. So just these are the sounds that we make with our voices. And in poetry, you have a lot of control over how the feeling that you want to give to somebody and the pace that you want to go at, the pace that you want your work read at. So when you're talking about serious things, you want to be down here in the low end of the vowel scale. So ooh, oh, ooh, ook, book, ah, oi. And then you kind of go up. And then when you want to sound cheerful and playful in your poem, and you want the pace to move much faster and feel lighter, you get up here in the high frequency vowel sounds. So A and I and E, I. And, you know, you can control how your audience is really feeling about I see someone's laughing. I know it's a lot of fun. I have fun with this one because I usually make everybody do all of the sounds together and when we're in a classroom setting, and it kind of shakes things up. And then people really kind of feel like what our voices are capable of doing. Ooh, oh, ooh, ah, oi, ah, you know, it kind of goes up. But anyways, so when you're writing, if you, and it probably just happens unconsciously too, that, you know, when we're writing about sad or difficult things, we're using these lower frequency vowel sounds because a lot of the words that have to do with sad and difficult things have these sounds in them naturally. Whereas some of our more buoyant experiences, happy, for instance, is like it just has these two light sounds, the E and the ah, like it's just a happy word. Whereas sad is this is one right here, like where is, I guess it's down here, but it's not quite as buoyant. Anyhow, or morose, that's got all of these sad little vowel sounds in here. But this is a poem demonstrating how that works. This is Alexander Pope, Sound and Sense. True ease in writing comes from art, not chance, as those move easiest who've learned the dance. 'Tis not enough, no harshness gives offense, the sound must seem an echo to the sense. Soft is the strain when zephyr gently blows, and the smooth stream in smoother numbers flows. But when loud surges lash the sounding shore, the hoarse rough verse should like the torrent roar. When Ajax strives some rock's vast weight to throw, the line too labors and the words move slow. Not so when swift Camilla scours the plain, flies o'er the unbending corn and skims along the main. Hear how Timotheus varied lays surprise and bid alternate passions fall and rise. So you can hear, I mean, the sound echoes the sense. So the meaning, it's being told, but it's also being felt in the language. So that's kind of interesting. Right? So now we're going to write for another 5 minutes. And this time I'll start the clock and you're going to write for 5 minutes about music. So think of one of your favorite songs or write down your favorite lyric from that song. Write about that. What about that lyric speaks to you? And is it what the song is saying or the way it's being said? Because music can change your mood like that. I always say, you know, it's good to, if you're feeling weirdly too, if you're feeling sad, if you listen to a bunch of sad songs, you'll feel better. But okay, I'm going to go ahead and start the clock and I'll see you all again in 5 minutes. Okay, so hopefully you got some good stuff out of that. Now this one, because I want to leave time for questions, this one you can do as like a little homework, homework assignment, I guess. Also, take time with this one. Take your time and see if you can really get a poem out of it. So this is a poet that I really admire. Her name is Kim Adenizio, and she has this great book called Ordinary Genius, and it's all poetry writing prompts. And in this book, she has one where she says, imagine a sentence as a hall with a series of doors. Each door is a possible way to use what you've already written to generate new material. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a sentence from your free write, so infinite possibilities, because a poem is a possibility. You're going to choose one of your original sentences from one of your free writes and write a few sentences to follow it. And you're going to do this at least 5 times and see what different narratives you come up with, okay? And as an example, I'll just share this poem called Daffodils, because I wrote this poem after the poet Wordsworth. He has this poem called I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. And in it, he talks about being really depressed and sad and lonely. And then he comes up over this hillside and he sees a field of daffodils swaying in the breeze. And he just feels really uplifted and light and happy. And for me, poetry has always had that effect. Like I've been able to turn to it and feel connected and good. Some poems really hit you and lift you out of where you're at, if it's or bring you to somewhere new. And so I wrote this poem called Daffodils because early on as a writer, people would always ask why I don't write about my heritage. And that's a complicated thing. What a person writes about is very personal. So these are a few answers that I came up with. And when I say the reason I'm using this as an example is you can look at, there are a lot of different ways to respond to any one thing. And in our own writing, this is also true. In our thinking in our lives, this is true. And so how you respond to it, if you explore the different ways that the alternate narratives that you can present from the single starting point, then it's very liberating and it makes you feel so free, creatively and otherwise, in your life. So Daffodils after Wordsworth. The Indigenous poet writes life-affirming poems about daffodils. Her audience says, but you're oppressed. The Indigenous poet writes poems of outrage about oppression. Nobody cares. She gets depressed. The Indigenous poet gets requests for poems about being Indigenous, but all my poems are about being Indigenous. The Indigenous poet isn't considered an Indigenous poet because shouldn't you write about genocide? The Indigenous poet tries to write poems about genocide. Her poet spirit dies. Genocide gets the job done. The Indigenous poet says Tangtatamhuila and writes about daffodils and the untouchable beauty of living a poet's life. So essentially just saying, you do you, you write about what you want to write about and it'll all work out. You're not beholden to an audience or, judges or maybe you're beholden to teachers just to kind of get through and learn some things, but ultimately you're beholden to your own true self. And if you want to write about daffodils and sunshine, because that makes you feel better, then that's definitely what you should do. This phrase here from the language, Stangtatamhuila, it means what the hail, because we didn't have swear words. It's kind of a little pun, hail, like hail that falls from the sky. Sorry, I don't know what they're doing out there. I don't know if you can hear the racket outside my window, but anyway. So yeah, we didn't have swear words and we didn't have the concept of hell. And so it's like just a little pun that my teacher taught me. I almost said Stangsaspachwang, which would have been with the fog, but I thought, oh gosh, that's explicit. Okay, going on, carrying on. This poem, The Glimmer. Well, let's just go ahead and, I guess I'll read it and then we'll answer questions. The Glimmer. From darkness, the idea of self blood, water, a soul, my body, a brief victory over death by making breath. Thoughts and actions in a series of moments expressed, a cup filled with bliss and the movement of breath, pulling itself into emptiness, water between stones, disappearing, how quickly it goes. I leave with my breath, I return with my breath, and I understand the tides. They are spun in currents by the exchange of breath. For kisses branded on flesh, we claim each with each, join names to our tongues, weld our memories to breath. In our chests, each moment dies for the next, singeing shut the spaces between each allotted breath, smelting our lives first into glitter, then into ash in this breathtaking glimmer above death, where we make breath. And that's that presentation. So there's time for questions, and definitely try the thing where you do 5 different takes on any sentence from your free write. Like maybe go through and choose whatever you want to write from, and expand upon, or see what directions you can go in with any one sentence as your starting point with many trails to go down. So that's your homework, and now I'll accept some questions.
That was amazing. That was so much fun. I wrote so much. I wrote about my dream last night, and then I wrote about the one song that kept coming into my head was Zombie by the Cranberries. And I'm like, I don't want to write about zombies. So I took the what's in your head part, and then I was able to build off of that, which was really cool. But yeah, I had a lot of fun with that. What did you think, Nicole?
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with that too. I really like the prompts, just for me personally, because like I am trying to write poetry too. So those are really good, like starting prompts for me. And like just sitting with yourself and being comfortable in the silence, I think was really powerful.
Awesome. Good. Great.
Yeah. And we have some questions for you. So the first question is, can you give advice to someone wanting to publish poetry?
Yeah, so if you're wanting to send your work out, I would definitely say get a Submittable account, and browse. You can browse. Do you want me to show you? I'll show you Submittable because it's really awesome. It's easy to use, and this is a good, it's a very powerful tool to for writers. So I'm signing into mine right now. Oh, no, sorry, I have to sign out. That's the wrong one. I have 2. I have one for my own personal stuff and one for the press that I'm working with to collect an anthology. So you can use it as a publisher or a writer. And so this is my writer's account. Let me go ahead and get to that, and then I'll share my screen. Okay, so here we go. Submittable is it is a tool for writers and publishers, and it's a way to connect. And these are all things that I've submitted and over time, but you can use this function right here, discover. And then if you want to search, poetry. So we want to find opportunities to publish poetry. And if there's a fee associated with submitting, it'll be listed right there. If not, if it's free, there won't be anything. So that's good. So you can, submit visual poetry. You can submit to Lumina Journal. That's actually the journal of the literary journal where I went to graduate school. So that's kind of funny. They're open right now. And you can look at them. Okay, so here's one. You can go to the Sad Girls Club and get editorial feedback and critique on your poetry. Streetlit, let's say, okay, I can pay $6 and submit my work, and then it'll tell you what they're looking for. You can send up to 3 poems, words about struggle, about the gutters, everyday people, everyday things, working 9 to 5. So that's what they're looking for. It'll say what they want to publish. And if you're like, oh, that's not right for you, you can, you can close out of there, or you can save it. If you're like, hey, that looks good, I want to do that. I want to do that later. You can save it and it'll go into your saved button right here. I don't know if I have anything saved right now. Let me see if I do. Oh yeah. Okay. So Stardust Review, Zank Books, Orca Literary Journal. So these are things that I've looked at in the past, and maybe I submitted or maybe I didn't, but anyhow, so this is Discover. And then if you want to follow an opportunity, you can go here, and the account is free to set up. So I'm following all of these different journals. So anytime they post something, it'll come up on my, it'll be saved. It'll come to me in a message. Anyhow, so that is a little crash course in Submittable. Free to sign up. You just have to give them your email because that's how you access it and log in. And then they send you things if you want to be notified of opportunities, they'll send you things. But it's kind of fun to look around and get familiar with what people are looking for and how they're publishing. It's really interesting.
Oh, that is very interesting. Yeah, I've never heard of Submittable before, but that's definitely a really important tool, I feel. And then our next question is, I'm having a writing block. How do you handle that? And where can I find inspiration?
Yeah, it's so sometimes, because I've come to think of writing blocks as letting the field lay fallow, right? Like if you keep planting a field, it becomes depleted. Whereas if you just let it rest for a year or two, then it'll have a really beautiful crop because the nutrients have to reaccumulate in the soil. And so when I feel like I can't write, I feel like it means that that's when I need to just kind of pay attention to the world, like shift your gaze elsewhere and focus on something else. And then kind of magically one morning you can write again. But in the meantime, I'm also, when I feel like I can't write, I just write meaningless things in the morning when I get up. Just like whatever, like today I have to do this, this, and that. And this is what I dreamt about. And I wonder what so-and-so is doing, like just really like random inane things, whatever I'm thinking about. I'll like just sit and I'll just try to fill at least a page or two with whatever I'm thinking, so that I feel like the practice is still in my body, and it's easier to get back to it and sit down and do it when inspiration strikes.
That's really good advice. Thank you. And then our next question is, do you do research when you're writing poems?
I do a lot of research when I'm writing poems. It's funny too how weirdly organically it happens. Like in the poem Tour of a Salmon Berry, I was thinking about language, like alila being the word in Chlamychasan, and then knowing that just kind of like from my past and my experience and everything, that Leela is God plays in Sanskrit, the idea that, creation through whimsy. And then I thought, well, I wonder what it is, like what their genus name is, like what the scientists call the salmonberry. And so, I looked that up and I'm like, Rubus spectabilis. And then I think, what does that mean? So then I look that up and it means red sight worth seeing. And I think, oh, wow, that's so beautiful. So you just kind of go down the little rabbit holes of curiosity and do just the way that the world is just so available to you now through the internet. It makes it so easy. Like, why would you just not follow your little curiosity, follow that thread, just kind of go along with it and see what's there. Whatever you're wondering about, if you research it, the discoveries are often surprising and often exciting.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. With like the internet being so accessible nowadays, it's like easier to like get into your curiosity and just go down like a rabbit hole of like what you're researching or what your poem's going to be about. So yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, it's fun.
And then our next question is, what inspired you to start writing poetry?
Well, let's see. I've always loved the sound of poetry. It's not ordinary language, right? I don't know if I would call, I mean, like, I think, sure, Dr. Seuss is poetry, but I remember being really little and wanting my mom to read that book, like the One Fish, Two Fish book, because I knew if I brought it over to her, even like before I knew what reading was, if I brought it over to her, that she would start making these sounds with her voice, like, you know, and it was like fun for me. I mean, I still love it. I still get a kick out of rhyming poetry. But I think that what inspired me to do it, I have like a little origin story, which is that there was, I had a fever. And so I had to stay home with my grandma because my mom was at work. So my grandma went and got my homework. And there was this little paper cloud that had tissue paper streamers in bright colors coming off the bottom of it. And we were supposed to write springtime words on it. Words that we associated with spring. And I remember thinking, oh, that's so pretty. I'm going to write a poem on this cloud. And so I did. And I brought, you know, I turned it in, and my teacher, she transcribed it and she gave it to the paper, and then they printed it and she cut it out and she brought it to me. And there was my poem with my name. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be a poet when I grow up. And my mom was like, how about a lawyer? And I just remember always kind of loving what can be done with language, and you know, that was the initial inspiration. And I didn't write another poem for a long, long time, but then I always kind of wrote and journaled and things like that. And so anyhow, yeah.
Yes, I really love like how you brought up language as like a source of healing, because like our language makes sounds that turn into songs. So I think that's like such a powerful tool. And I really love how you brought that up.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then a next question we have is, where can I buy one of your books?
So I have links to the books on my website, which is renapriest.com. And most of those links will take you to Village Books, which is the independent bookseller here in Bellingham, where I live. And it's a treasure. They have all kinds of programming, and they're just like a real beautiful thing to have in our community. I need to update my page though, where you can buy books, because I just edited an anthology and that'll be available in April. And so I will be updating that page very soon. But for now, you can get my books at renapriest.com/books.
Perfect.
The book that I'm working on, it hasn't been picked up for publication yet, but kind of, you know, holding out for that. So there'll be a new book within a year.
Oh, yay, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
And then a next question we have is, do you do much poetry in languages other than English?
So my second book, Sublime Subliminal, I don't write in another language, but the book Sublime Subliminal has a lot of different poems, or has a lot of different languages embedded in the poems, because that collection was written to the prompt 20 Little Poetry Projects. If anyone wants to look that up, it's a really great way to fall in love with language again. And you know, like if you're having writer's block, write to 20 Little Poetry Projects, and it's so fun. But one of the poetry projects is to include a foreign language phrase in the poem. And so each of the poems in that collection, Sublime Subliminal, has a foreign language phrase. And I had a lot of fun researching those too. Like I would ask friends who spoke foreign languages, or I would like, you know, look up idioms and read through and see what was there. One of my favorites is Italian. They have a saying, "Mal comune mezzo gaudio," which means a shared evil is half a joy. like if I'm depressed, it's better if you're also depressed, right? Like it's kind of messed up, the crab in the bucket. But anyhow, they have that in Italy too.
Awesome. And then what is your favorite poem that you've written and why?
Oh, I always say that it's the most recent one. It's the last poem I've written. Because I think it's the most fresh in my memory, or like the act of writing is still that feeling is still like kind of there in that poem with me, until I write a new one. And so yeah, that's the one, the baby, the new one.
And then another question we have is, what are your favorite poets and any poetry books you recommend?
Yeah, I would say definitely check out Natalie Diaz. Her book, Post-Colonial Love Poem, won the Pulitzer in 2020. And she's, I think, the first Indigenous poet to win since N. Scott Momaday, like in the 70s. But that book, holy cow, it'll just knock your socks off. It's amazing. I remember I read it and I was like, I should just quit. This is nobody ever needs to, she just said it all. We just don't need to write anymore. But at the same time, like tremendous admiration, and just awe of that work. Layli Long Soldier is also really good. Her book Whereas is very beautiful and hard, very hard in places, but powerful. I like Ilya Kaminsky's work. He's Ukrainian, and he has two books, Dancing in Odessa and Deaf Republic, and they're both just astounding. Gosh, so many. Let's see. Of course, Joy Harjo's poetry is always just beautiful. For this kind of thing, Mary Oliver, she's helpful in like how you shift your focus towards. There's a lot of epiphany in Mary Oliver's work. Like you start out going down one road and then you have this like beautiful aha kind of partway through and you're like, oh, thanks, Mary.
Wow, that's really good. Yeah, I feel like I've heard of the post-colonial love one before. I've read that for like some of my classes, and I agree with you. Like everything in there, I'm like, wow, I have no words. Like she just took them all.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we have one last question. It is, where do you think your poetry is headed in the future?
So my new collection is called Dancing to the Ticking of the Doomsday Clock. And it sounds dark, but the epigraphs hopefully shed light on what it actually is. Like the Doomsday Clock is a device that the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists have created so that like to show people like, look, these are the existential threats that face humanity, like climate change and nuclear war and AI and all these things that could, go catastrophically wrong. And so we're at 100 seconds to midnight. They adjust it every year in January to show. So we were at 2 minutes to midnight in 2018. We're at 100 seconds to midnight now. But dancing to the ticking of the doomsday clock, it says that, in my tribal community, when things are really dark and seem hopeless, we sing and we dance in ceremony, and that will shift, or you'll find an answer, or you'll find a way through that, or find the strength to face the thing that you need to face in order to find a way through it. And so it's just the idea that, there's hope, I guess. But the new work, it looks honestly at how we've come to the place now where we are in this sort of moment of truth, and like kind of having a moment of reckoning where we need to change as a species meaningfully in order to fix things that are, kind of really difficult. But yeah, hopefully it's a hard sell. I think it's a hard thing. People maybe don't want to really read about it, but maybe it'll find a home. We'll see.
Yes, and that was our last question. And Thank you so much to all our guests and everyone for joining us today. And thank you so much, Rena Priest, for an amazing discussion. It was really great to learn about the prompts that you gave us and sitting with yourself in silence and creating that creativity for poetry and just being comfortable with sitting in yourself with that silence. And it was really great to learn about your experience, and thank you so much. And just before we end this webinar, we would love to bring your attention to our upcoming UBCLC webinars. So we have Children Health and Wellbeing Assessment, a strength-based app to measure FNIM, children's well-being, with Dr. Nancy Young and Mia Borcu. It's on April 11th at 10 a.m. And to sign up for our newsletter, the link will be in the chat. All these webinars are free to sign up at our website, www.learningscircle.ubc.ca. And thank you for everyone joining us today. We look forward to seeing everyone at our next Learning Circle. Chi miigwech, thank you.
Hi, Shka. Thank you.